Tony, we're at Life Lessons in the Garden, number 5. We're in a different part of the garden. It's called a sensory garden. And in the sensory garden, there's 5 different areas that stimulate our senses. And with each one of these sections, we are stimulated our senses by things. The first one is smell. We have things like geraniums here and basil. We go to the sight garden. To tell you the truth, it's the end of the season, so a lot of the flowers are gone. But the sight was different types of sights and textures, as you can see here, different flowers. And we come over here to taste. Taste, a lot of these flowers are gone too, and I remember spearmint was in here. There was something here that the animals tasted, and it's all gone. I don't even know what that is. The next part is touch, and you can see these are kind of fuzzy. Then we have some prickly type of succulents right there. And look at this plant. Isn't that really wild? And the last one is, what do you think the last one is? The last one is sound. And sound is right here. However, this is a fountain which normally has water running through it, which is sound of babbling brook or water. And so those are the 5 senses that stimulate us in this 3-dimensional world. And we're going to go to the next section which explains that. So we were in the sensory garden. We talked about being stimulated with our 5 senses from those 5 different sections of the garden. And we live in a 3-dimensional world, which we are stimulated by different stimulants, and we kind of experience life through that. I'm going to ask you to kind of think outside the box in the next thing I'm going to tell you, because physicists say that there's actually 10 dimensions. Let's go backwards a little. 2-dimension is like a picture of me. 3-dimension is me in this world that we live in. Physicists say that the 4th dimension is the dimension of time. Now, you can't see time, although we look at a clock or a watch and we think we see time, but that's just a counting of time passing. But time is actually another dimension that we move through. Let me give you an example of how time can be different. You go down a great adventure, you're waiting on a line for a ride that you really want to go on. And you're waiting 5 minutes, but it seems like a half hour. You finally get on the ride, and the ride seems like it's over in a couple of seconds, but it was 5 minutes. And so the difference between our perception of 5 minutes can change. So time is this other dimension. So as I said before, physicists believe that there's 10 different dimensions. One of the dimensions I believe that's there is a spiritual dimension. And in this spiritual dimension, I believe there's a battle between good and evil that affects us in this 3-dimensional world that we live in. One of the reasons I bring that up is because a good friend of mine, and you kind of have to know him to understand what a good person he is. And yet, through a number of circumstances, became a heroin addict. There are teenage girls out there cutting. There's 2 kids in a high school nearby us that both committed suicide, and yet when you talk to people, they will tell you how they were normal, happy kids, and yet they committed suicide. So I do believe that there's an effect in this spiritual dimension that affects us in this 3-dimension. I'm not naive enough to think that that's the only thing that affects these people's lives, but I do believe that since it's something we don't see, a dimension we don't see, that we don't give it enough attention. So I wrote a song about that I dedicated to my friend, and it's a song about this, and I'm going to put the link on this lesson so you can go to it. It is pretty graphic, but you know what? Suicide, self-harm, and addiction is graphic, but I just wanted to warn you. Next week, the other Tony will be back, and on the lighter side, he's going to be talking about the lighter side of 3 types of love. You don't want to miss it. Peace and love.